Hey everyone, I'm Kate Kennedy here with day 69 of 100 Days of Kane, PA. And it's Wednesday night, so you know what that means. It means it's History Night, where we hear stories about our town's past from members of the Kane Historic Preservation Society. And if you remember on day 27, Denny Driscoll started telling us stories from the Kane Memorial Chapel. And we didn't have enough time to hear everything. So today he's here for part 2 to share more about the stories of what has happened and what makes this chapel such a special place. So I'm going to go ahead and around, and we're going to walk over to the front of the chapel here, and we're going to say hello to Mr. Driscoll. Hi.
Welcome, Kate.
How are you?
Great. I'm so pleased you came to visit Thomas L. Kane tonight. We're in a spot that a lot of people might think is the ending spot, but for many of us, many dreams, this is really the beginning. You're welcome to come in.
All right.
The beautiful thing about this gate, it's freshly painted thanks to the Rotary, done in the spirit of all those people who gathered together to put the playground up a few years ago. And notice there's no lock on it. Every once in a while it jams up a little bit, but everybody's welcome to come in here.
All right, and we're right here in the front of the Memorial Chapel, and it's the section in between the different doors. There's a gated area, and it's a very special area because there's some great history and great stories that took place right here.
Yes, and if everybody will recall where you started actually taking the images from is where a photographer was about 1893 taking this photograph. And this is the photograph of the Bucktail reunion held really right here at the chapel. The Kane family's in the picture.
Could you remind us all what the Bucktails are?
Yes, the Bucktails were a regiment of volunteer rifles that Thomas L. Kane established at the very beginning in the Civil War in Smethport. They were known for having bucktails in their hats. If you see the famous movie on Abraham Lincoln, you'll notice that he had several soldiers at the doorways in the White House as guards. And you'll notice in their hats they had bucktails because he selected the bucktails to be his personal bodyguards. Now, not a Ford's Theater, though. That they weren't there, so we don't want to mix anybody up with that.
Yeah, so this is a photo of a reunion of the Bucktail soldiers.
Yes, and you'll see their family. And right in this position, you'll notice that there's a sculptural bust of the general. And we have him out here tonight.
So this is a picture from the 1890s that feature a bust of Thomas Kane, which is this very bust that is out here tonight.
Yes.
Where is this bust typically kept?
We keep it in the chapel right now. We keep it over by the memorial carved granite plaque, and it keeps there. But the interesting thing is that someone came to town about 3 weeks ago, and called John Marconi. And John is great at sharing stories. And in fact, he told me this story. Here, the person was one of Thomas L. Kane's great-granddaughters. And not to give away any ages, but she was probably about my age. And she wanted to go down to the railroad station because she wanted to see the wolves. One thing she was interested in very much was the wolves because her father wouldn't let her go to see the wolves when she was growing up. But she did find a way to get to see them. But she was really interested in history. And another thing she asked about was this particular bust, the bust sculpture of General Kane. And John assured her that it was still at the chapel and that she could go up and see it. So he brought her up here. And one of the most amazing things happened. As soon as she saw it in the corner of the chapel, I'll take it back in there later so everyone can see where it belongs. But as soon as she walked in, she saw the bust there, and she didn't say anything. She immediately went up to the bust, hugged it, and kissed it. And she said, as a little girl, she used to kiss her great-grandfather every single day.
How special.
And it was just such one of the most heartwarming stories. I'll never be able to look at this figure again and think of how many people ever get a chance to hug and kiss their great-grandfather, or even think about it.
Yeah.
And so it was just such a magic thing, and the special nature, the fact that it was even here. She specifically wanted to see this, didn't say anything, went up and kissed it, and then told the story about how she did that when she was a little girl.
How special that it's been preserved, because the 1890s are a long time ago. And it's in very good condition, and that fact that it's available for people to see, and that we have the documentation of that photograph of the Bucktail reunion with the bust in it is a really, really special connection to the history.
Yeah, in fact, before we go in, I'll carry it out and I'll hold it right about in the same place that it is in this photograph. So we're really time travelers. That's the beautiful thing about history. That's the miraculous thing about everything that goes on. In fact, this gravesite being here is something of a mystery and a magic moment.
So we haven't even talked about that yet. So where we're standing behind the fence that I came through is whose grave?
It's right where Thomas L. Kane's gravesite is.
Which is so amazing.
It has its birthday, and its birthday, as you can see, was January the 27th, 1822, which means in just 3 years, it's going to be his bicentennial birthday, 200 years, which is it's sort of a magic number for America to begin with. If you remember when America had the bicentennial birthday, people were painting flags on utility poles, and they were painting the fire hydrants and so forth. And so there's a major celebration. And so we've got a lot of interesting celebrations coming up. So coming in here, really visiting him reminds us of the future, of what we have to celebrate because of what happened here. The interesting thing is that a lot of people didn't want him to be buried here. In fact, a lot of people, several people from the congregation left the congregation when he decided to be buried here. When they found out he was going to be buried here.
Because when he died, this church was an active Christian church.
It was. And his name wasn't on it anyplace. The only Kane name that was represented on our memorial marker was his mother's name, Jane Duval. Leeper was her last name. That wasn't on there, but Jane Duval Kane. That was the only Kane on that whole list.
But if we remember from last time, or maybe you could refresh us from last time, how involved Thomas L. Kane was in this chapel.
Right. He did the sketches for this way back in England when he was in the late teens or early 20s, early 21. And so he had the dream of building this all along. We have another neat surprise for you that you'll see in a minute. However, he then channeled the money. His aunt, Anne Gray Leeper Thomas, came and wanted to rebuild his mill. And again, he selected to build this memorial chapel instead.
And so even though the people who were parishioners at this church at the time of his death didn't realize that he was involved, he really was instrumental to this whole thing coming to be.
Oh, correct. And was with it 100%, was with the building process, and the rest is some of the history, but he died in Philadelphia. And if you see, what was your favorite day of the year, Kate?
Well, it might be my birthday.
Oh, hey, that's a great one. And that can almost be any day because every moment is an opportunity to be reborn. And that's kind of a fun way to look at life. But he actually died the day after Christmas in 1883.
So he died in Philadelphia, but his remains are buried here.
He did. And he died in Philadelphia. And I thought he must have really loved Christmas because he wanted to spend his last day of full breath on earth on Christmas Day.
Do you know what his cause of death was?
Yes, it was basically pneumonia, but the war left him with tremendous wounds. He actually, after the war, and the amazing thing, everything he did here, the Kinsua Viaduct, this building, the whole town is sawmills. He really couldn't even get on a horse by himself. He always had breathing problems. He had a gunshot through the face, and so he played havoc with his teeth. And so he just was, a lot of people thought he was on the verge of physiological disaster at any time, most of his life when he was here.
But he never let that slow him down. It seems like his spirit was so much bigger than his physical health because he just kept going for social justice and for the betterment of all, it sounds like.
Perfect, yes. And so anyway, he did, when he planned this, I don't know. It's the perfect spot. How many churches have two doors like this? This spot is just perfect for this grave site. And he could have been buried in Philadelphia. He could have been buried at Laurel Hill Cemetery, which is where his brother's buried. And that's one of the most historic cemeteries in all of America. But instead, he wanted to be buried here. And it's a great miracle and a great treasure to us that he made that choice. But one thing, if he wasn't buried here, who knows what would have happened to the Mormons, whether they would have come here, whether they would have saved the building, whether when the congregation moved to another church, whether this building would have suffered a demise. But the fact that he's buried here gave it a time span long beyond even the organization of a congregation.
And we had talked in past weeks with various people about how instrumental Thomas Kane was into really saving the Mormons and averting a war against them through his peace talks with the governor and the leader of the Mormons. And so could you kind of talk about how you're saying that it was really important that he was buried here because the Mormons helped save the chapel, but I don't know if we've talked about that yet. Could you talk about how they have contributed to preserving this landmark here?
Yes, well, it was probably in about 1970. This was in danger of being torn down. The Mormons, again, don't buy old churches. But they bought this one because Thomas Kane was so important to their existence. I can remember one February day, it's snowing, and a gentleman pulls up in front of the railroad station, and we were in doing some work. And he came in, and here he was the state representative from the Mormon church. And he came in and introduced himself, a very nice gentleman. And he had tears in his eyes. And he said, my grandfather was, or my great-grandfather, couldn't hug him, but was a personal bodyguard of Brigham Young. And he said, we wouldn't have existed had Thomas Leaper Kane not have interceded. And he was probably, and he absolutely was, the only person in the universe that could have interceded on the behalf of the Mormons.
That's amazing.
And so when they saw that we had an interest in it and that we shared their special love for the place and the spirit here, they openly shared it with us. But they came here and they just completely redid everything that needed to be done, put a new slate roof on it, and did tremendous things for the community, for this. But we always felt that there was a point at which we as a community needed to take responsibility. And they saw that as the true thing, and we discussed that a little bit last time. So, but really, Kane has been filled with people who were the only ones in the universe could do something. The wolves, the Great Plains Lobo wolves, would not exist if it wasn't for a gentleman by the name of Dr. McCleary. No one else is going to save the wolves. If they would have stayed in Montana, they probably would have been exterminated.
Yeah, so Kane has had a legacy of people, individuals who have been in the right place at the right time to make significant differences. And this chapel is an example of that, because Thomas L. Kane, who was so important to the Mormons, built this chapel. The Mormons came and restored it when it was at a crucial point, and then gave it to the community, you guys, to take care of and steward from now on. And we're standing here at the burial site of Thomas L. Kane that anyone can come to at any time and visit.
Yes, and it's always open. And the neat thing is, in a way, it's a place of rebirth. The dreams are still alive here. The presence is still here. And so, and in a way, this is the beginning. We used to take students over to the mausoleum. And in the autumn, when the leaves were down, you could see the steeple to this church. And we could always point out that his family was buried over here, but he alone is here in this site. The neat thing is, he knew that if he was buried in Philadelphia, his family would probably never see him again. So luckily, all the people that have benefited from the treasure of his dreams have an opportunity to come and share their dreams at this really special spot.
So his family, his wife and his children, there's a mausoleum on Cemetery Hill that houses them, that in the fall, when the leaves are down, you can see the tip of this chapel. So they're connected from afar.
Yes, so
that's really special.
It's a nice hike, and it's nice to realize that everything is still connected.
That's awesome. And you said that there's something special inside too. So would you mind taking us in and we can check that out? Or is there anything else while we're out here that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we've covered it. There was a gentleman when I came today who was here. I saw a walking stick parked there, and he, like the Mormon, had tears in his eyes, and I don't know what his thoughts were, but this is a place of homecoming for a lot of people with a lot of dreams, and there's a certain sadness, but a real joy in the sadness as well. So what's wonderful about this spot is the absolute diametric beauty of the place. You can be sad and joyful at the same time. You can be warm and you can be cold at the same time. You can be all those things, and you can dream anything and anything and be perfectly safe here.
And so anyone who wants to can come visit the gravesite of Thomas L. Kane here at the Memorial Chapel and kind of figure out what their own experience would be.
Great.
All right, we're going to follow you inside then so we can see the next part of the history.
In fact, I'm going to take the general back in.
All right.
We don't want him to stay up here, but in passing, I'm going to put him right about in the same place he was over 100 years ago.
All right, you let us know where that is.
About 125 years ago, to be exact. And he was standing there right about here. And he was on a pedestal on a single column table next to his family. So his children are there, and this photograph is in the chapel. So you can come in and visit the rest of the family too.
How neat. That's so neat. I didn't realize that the Bucktails had a reunion, and I think it's really cool that a picture was captured of the bust out front that we can still have today to reference that time period. And that you know where the spot is. You're a treasure of history for us. So we're going to follow you in. We're walking into the chapel. You guys remember from the previous talk that we had about the chapel that this is the inside with the beautiful roof and the windows that Mr. Driscoll talked about last time. So if not, it's day 27. You can go back and reference if you missed that one and learn the part 1 of the Kane Memorial, Thomas L. Kane Memorial Chapel stories.
And I'll put him back in his corner so that when his great-granddaughter comes to visit again, she'll be able to find him.
So this is where the bust is usually housed and stored, is the corner here. When you walk in the door, it's the corner to the far right. So whenever somebody wants to come and see that, they can just contact you guys with the History Society, and you can give them a tour and show them the chapel in person, or the bust in person.
Yeah, we don't carry him around too much.
That's not a usual thing.
But if someone wants a hug, I'm sure the general will accommodate.
All right, and we have one more thing to talk about, one more story to share tonight. So we're going to follow you, and you can go ahead and tell about this kind of newer story.
Right, we talked about an acquisition, and right at the top of our memorial is this church was erected by Anne Gray Thomas, and they actually skipped one of her names in there. Her name would be Anne Gray Leeper Thomas, and for the first time, we have an image of her in this building. And she's the one that made it possible economically for Thomas L. Kane to build this lasting memorial to community.
So this is Thomas L. Kane's aunt.
Right, this was
who
his
funded
correct.
The building of the chapel.
Yes, and this was his mother. There were 10 children in the Leeper family. His mother was the 6th, and Anne Gray was the 7th, so she was the younger sister. The interesting thing is this painting was done all the way back in 1837.
Oh, wow.
Elizabeth Kane was born in 1836, and Anne Gray Thomas had this painting done, started it on December the 13th in 1836, the same year that Elizabeth was born.
Oh, wow.
And he finished it in January. But the really interesting thing about this is that Thomas Sully did over 2,631 paintings.
And he's the artist.
He's the artist, and probably and certainly the most famous historic portrait painter and most successful. He not only did George Washington. He did George Washington's passage on the Delaware, which was just a monstrous piece. It was like 207 inches by 146 inches. If you're counting, it's 12 feet by 17 feet plus. In fact, he did it for the North Carolina State House, and they didn't even have a wall big enough for it.
Oh, wow.
And so now you have to go to Boston to visit this, which is a great pleasure to do anyway. So that would be good. But the neat thing about this is that he did this in 1837. He also was commissioned to do a painting of this Queen of England. It was a lady by the name of Victoria. And Queen Victoria was very young at that time because she just became queen the year before. And so I really think that this painting was a warmer-upper for him to go paint Queen Victoria. Now remember, they didn't have any Instamatics and they didn't have any phones to take images with. If you wanted a portrait of someone, the person had to sit. So Queen Victoria had to sit during 3 months. Actually, it was March, April, and May of 1838 that she was sitting. But there's one part where there's a full figure of her, where Thomas Sully brought his daughter Blanche to England with him so that she could wear the costume of the Queen, and so he could do all the clothing. And then he did a couple of portraits of her, but he did many portraits later. A portrait artist would do one really fantastic portrait and then never finish it because they'd use that as the model. So the person couldn't be there, but their portrait would be there.
And so Thomas Sully's the artist, and he's the one that you're talking about right now that did Queen Victoria's portrait. But prior to doing her portrait, he did some portraits of George Washington and of Thomas L. Kane's aunt, the one that funded this memorial chapel. And is this the first time that you've seen a picture of her? Or have you seen a picture of her before? I know this is a new portrait, but...
Well, we brought it down here just shortly one time, but we keep it up at the railroad station because we have the alarm system set up there. It's more viable, and it's air conditioned all the time.
Yes.
So we have the climate control, and actually we have a painting of her husband too, which is also up at the station. And in fact, we believe we have 4 Thomas Sully paintings up there.
How awesome. What a treasure that you guys acquired in this. And if someone would want to see it in person, they could make arrangements to come up to the depot to see it, or they could come on a Wednesday or a weekend to see it as well, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
That's so special. Well, this has been a great history lesson and stories of Kane's past. Is there anything else about the Memorial Chapel that you wanted to talk about before we wrap up for the night?
Well, remember, you can visit the General anytime your heart desires. So it's that special place that's always available.
The fence is unlocked. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time. This was really interesting. We learned so much tonight, and just appreciate you sharing the stories of Kane's history.
Well, thank you, Kate, and thanks most of all for the community. It's been so supportive of everything we've done in trying to preserve the wealth, the unbelievable wealth of history that the Kane family has given us. And
absolutely. Well, thank you again, and thank you guys for watching. It is really interesting. I encourage you, if you haven't been up to the chapel, stop up and visit the gravesite of Thomas L. Kane. What a special piece of Kane's history that it's right here, that it's accessible to anybody to come visit. And I learned so much tonight about Thomas L. Kane, the Memorial Chapel, and I think it's really amazing to see the painting of the woman who funded the chapel, Thomas Kane's aunt. And we encourage you any Wednesday night or any weekend to stop by, or if you are coming from out of town or can't make it out during those time, contact the Kane Historic Preservation Society and they'll make a special arrangement to give you a tour, because this history is priceless, and to see it for yourself is so amazing, and that we have it right here, so accessible, is a really, really special thing. So please come on down and let us know. We only have a few more Wednesdays left. I can't believe how fast the 100 days is going, but we have a few Wednesdays left. So any ideas that you have to share of pieces of Kane's history that you want to hear in the upcoming weeks, please comment, and we'll do our best to get to those stories in the upcoming Wednesdays. So thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 70.